depicting a lush equatorial landscape with a waterfall that cascaded all the way from the roof to ground level, then flowed sideways into a small brook that ran through a rainforest teeming with greenery and brightly colored flowers. The mural was remarkably pristine, except for where it was interrupted by windows or the metal door we were now walking toward. I stopped for a second to take in the incongruous sight. The last thing I'd expected to find in prison was a classic specimen of terrible tropical kitsch. The whole place was full of the kinds of printed wallpaper nature scenes that were fashionable in the 80s and 90s, but this masterpiece had been meticulously painted by the hand of an artist willing to deploy every last drop of their mawkish talent in an attempt to make the prison facility look cheerful. It felt like a nightmare, not a prison. How else to explain these artistic flourishes that seemed custom-made to personally enrage and revolt me? Had the walls been a grim black or a dirty yellow, like public buildings usually are, it would never have aggravated me the way this silent tropical monstrosity did. One of the plainclothes guys gave me a shove, and we went in through the metal door. Another gentleman led me up to the first floor, and as we ascended, the stream of tacky shit followed us, in full color, along the walls. First, a sun setting behind a wooded hill topped with a European-looking log cabin. Then another sunset, this time on a palm-lined beach. On it went. The only respite for the eyes was the occasional framed quotation from the Holy Quran. These lurid scenes were painted with a high degree of artistry. In one, for example, the rays of the setting sun filtered delicately through the branches of a tree, and you could clearly make out the careful brushstrokes where the painter had alternated between orange and green. Indeed, had switched to a smaller brush to give the emerald leaves an incandescent golden outline. The proportions, depth, and perspective were, for the most part, highly accurate. To me, the mere fact that the paintings were three-dimensional was already impressive enough. It was certainly well-executed kitsch, even if it was hard on the eyes and the stomach. I tend to experience art viscerally. I feel it involuntarily in my digestive system, all the way down to my urinary tract, and the result can be pain, pleasure, or a cramp, agony, or delight. And all this was just a first taste of the torment that would be my daily bread here in Tora Agricultural Prison, where I was sentenced to spend 2 years for gross violation of public decency. My image of prison was a cell that was isolated from the outside world. It would be gray, no other color could exist there. But when prison became my life, the things I'd imagined all seemed naive, like a collage I'd put together out of bits and pieces of prison literature and art. Instead, prison turned out to be painted in garish colors and decorated with the sort of European Baroque landscapes that the modern Egyptian considered a tasteful addition to their sitting room or juice bar. The state and the powers that be thought these bright colors would improve their standing in the field of human rights. They made the prison look nice for the carnivalesque media delegations that showed up every so often to set the record straight on the lies peddled by activists and foreign NGOs. On more than one occasion, in fact, the announcement of an official pardon for a few dozen prisoners would be the pretext for them to lock us all in our cells, then order the army conscripts who worked as sentries to put on civvies and impersonate the pardoned inmates in the garden. The external gates would open, and reporters and TV cameras would stream in to film the prisoners who had supposedly been granted a reprieve against a backdrop of desert island beaches and Scandinavian pine forests. The soldiers obediently danced and laughed for the cameras and prostrated themselves in the dust, raising their hands in prayer and gratitude for the mercy and generosity and kind-heartedness of the President and the Minister of the Interior. Even the isolation that I'd imagined would accompany the gray color didn't turn out to exist. When the guard closed the cell block door, I found myself in a space designed for 60 prisoners that actually held many more. Some people were lying on the floor, in the bathroom, or in the kitchen. I was led straight to an upper bunk. The bunks were concrete ledges, 80 centimeters long and 30 centimeters wide. I spent the first hour being stared at by my cellmates. They were pretty taken aback at the sight of the chief of intelligence personally leading me into the cell block and choosing a bunk for me, and then found my